Welcome to the Art of World of Warcraft panel.
Okay. Hello, how's everybody doing? Yeah. So, thank you for coming out today, and thank everyone who's watching via the virtual ticket. And we have a variety of art disciplines out here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about character art. And the character art, of course, you know, we make characters, but we also do the armors, the creatures, weapons, and most of the mounts in game. So we've been working on a ton of new content for this expansion, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the cultures that you'll be meeting as you play through the Alliance and Horde experience. First, I'll travel to Kulturas for the Alliance experience, and you'll meet the Kultirans, who are a rugged, seafaring, militaristic people who have suffered through countless years of war against the now extinct Drustvar. And we wanted some of the Kultirans to look a little different from our current humans, since they're battle-hardened and they take on gigantic sea creatures. So we wanted to give them more robust shapes and more menacing facial features. And they're so tough, we're not giving them armors or weapons. We're shipping them like this. No, they're going to get a full set of unique armors and weapons. And one of the things we wanted for the Kultirans is to have practical armors. So for their culture kit, which is a culmination of where they live, how they live, and what they use in their everyday life, they have clothing that's made for harsh weather. It's very practical, like layered materials. And you can see from their high collars that they don't live in a very nice environment. Even their faces, they don't look very happy. And same to go with their weapons. We wanted to have them elegant with the nautical motifs. And also, you can look at them and say, hey, you know what? I can use these in real life. So Kultiras is full of dark secrets. And who likes dark secrets? Oh, okay, I like that. I like dark secrets too. But PG rated, of course. But something or someone is harnessing the ancient druidic death magic of the Drustvar and is using it to spread terror throughout Kulturas. And, whoa, obviously it's not them. They're just sweet little old ladies who want to use your bones for rituals, you know, just like Grandma used to do. But we really wanted to show that as they use this death magic, they become stronger, but it twists and contorts their bodies and just changes them. And just to show you, she's only 18. So death magic's no good. But, you know, if you want to use it, you can create terrible creatures like this wicker creature, who's made out of bones, sticks, dead furs, dead cats, week old socks, all kinds of nasty stuff. And to have that druidic element in them, we still wanted all the natural pieces in there, but not friendly like your treants. And the pinnacle of these wicker creatures is this wicker golem, who's a gigantic, lumbering creature, and here's how big you are. He's not in the safe space. And he's just going to be wandering the forest, just tearing everything in his path. So, playing on the Horde side, you'll be traveling to Zandalar, where you'll be going to the ancient golden city of Zuldazar. Here you'll meet characters like King Rastakhan. And for their look, we really referenced their awesome architecture and environment that was created for them as a style guide. And a lot of the troll style was influenced by Aztec and Mayan cultures, also with dinosaur motifs and lots and lots of gold for this particular culture. And also a lot of different reliefs and carvings in there to show that there are people that are steeped in rituals and worship. And of course, if there's Zandalar, there's got to be dinosaurs, right? Give it up for dinosaurs. Anybody. So we got this huge brotosaur. We're going to see lumbering in the wilderness and also used as beasts of burden. If they're going to be mounts, I don't know. Oh, I didn't. There he is. And just to show you how big it is, Protosaur, Devilsaur, and you. Also not in a safe place. And the Zandalari also worship these wild gods, or known as Loas, who are starting to vanish and become corrupted. And that's all thanks to, oh, did I just do something wrong? Okay. That's all thanks to the blood trolls, who are a savage, matriarchal culture that worships the blood gods. And they use this blood magic to corrupt where they're from and the surrounding creatures, and just produce horrible undead nightmares on the Zandalari. And also making these blood beasts, who are these vicious creatures that they use as hunters and mounts. And at the same time, you look vicious, but you kind of want to pinch them. Here's some brand new animations for them. Rah. That's what they sound like in game. And just like the Zandalari, they have their own Loas. This is a corrupted bat Loa. And we just want to have a really stark contrast between the two cultures, where one culture you look at, you can say, okay, they can invite me in, maybe we'll smoke a peace pipe or something. But in this one, they're going to use your bones as armor. So a really big difference between the two cultures. And things have been really heating up between the Horde and Alliance. And now it's total war. And to showcase this, we're going to make unique armors and weapons for Horde and Alliance, so you can represent your faction, join the warfront, and battle for Azeroth. And I'm just going to quickly play us out with a video of just some of the gear you'll be seeing. And coming up next will be Ian Lang with animation, who's going to show us how animation brings Warcraft to life. Thank you very much, and hope you enjoyed the rest of the panel.
How was everybody today? Oh, that was great. I didn't have to ask twice. As Chris said, my name is Ian Lang. I'm an animator on the WoW team. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the world building the animation team has gotten to do, and how a strong cultural narrative helps drive a lot of the decisions we make. So when I first got to Blizzard, I asked the team, what would be your favorite pet project, right? Your biggest wish list item. And the thing that they responded was adding texture to the city's animations, to make them feel alive. Not just alive with the chaos of hundreds and hundreds of players, but to make them feel like they had their own purpose, their own heart and soul. So in Legion, Suramar showed that we could design this rich, vibrant city. But though it was a success in many ways, the animation team felt like we had just started to scratch the surface. So Suramar became a great case study in showing a desire to do more of this type of work. So when world building, you have to ask yourself, right? What is the culture? What helps define its people? What drives them? So let's take our first location, Freehold, which is a port in Kul Tiras. So Freehold is a naval port, right? So it's going to need workers, it's going to need couriers, it's going to need people to build the ships, people to work the docks, and probably most importantly, it's going to need beer. Yeah, lots and lots and lots of beer. So it's a naval port, right? A mercantile port, right? So the first thing we really wanted to do was really get across this idea of these chaotic streets, merchandise being shuffled up and down the city. So that became our first objective. So once a location has a lot of merchandise and trade, there begins to be this sort of seedy environment that starts to take root underneath, trying to take advantage of any of the weaknesses. So enter our pickpockets, rogues, and thieves. I mean, to be honest, no one's going to sit on a wall like that who's not up to no good. So now that the government realizes that they have a problem, right? They realize that there are these people trying to take advantage of the trade. They're going to try and do something to protect it. They're going to try and do something to protect the merchandise. So what better way to do that than with an elite squadron of guards? Now, guards has been something we've had in WoW for many years. It's nothing new. But in this expansion, we really wanted to start breaking up a lot of the poses, start breaking up some of the silhouettes. So some might be stoic, some might be a little bit more relaxed, hopefully not too relaxed. So now that the government has a way to protect all their goods, They also need a way in which to spread the message around, spread a lot of rules and edicts. You know, Kulturas is a large place, so they have to be able to do this. What better way than with criers? So they're going to help spread the message around, right? So you see, we took one core idea, Freehold being a mercantile seaport, and from that, ideas just started to really kind of dovetail off of each other, one just helping to motivate the next. But it's important to create cohesion. So say we did all of this work, and then at the end, we're like, oh, let's make a shaman, and it's in the corner, and it's whittling some weird bone fragment. It would have divorced the player from that experience. It would have broke the narrative that we were trying to support. So it's important we keep that cohesion. So what if the environment was completely different? So let's take a turn to the macabre. What sort of a culture would exist here? So like in Freeport, where we have, or Freehold, where we have a lot of commerce and trade, we have a different sort of commodity here, blood. And since blood doesn't just come from thin air, you need a way in which to harvest it, to collect it. So behold, the volunteers. Not very willing, obviously, but. So now they're collecting, they're harvesting all this blood, but this kind of begs the question, why? It's not for trade, but what is it for? They're using it to fuel their dark blood magic, to bend and corrupt creatures towards their will, for their gods demand it. And the priests are their messengers. So design has created this rich, dark world, and it was our job to ensure that the animations really helped to accentuate the culture, invoking motifs through the animation. This just helps the player really feel and understand the city that they've entered. So animation's job is to always ask this question: how can we visualize these cultures through their actions? You know, whether it's a seaport, a mercantile in nature, or it's a deadly cult bent towards corrupting with their dark blood magic. And the designers love having all these extra options to help fill out the world. So wherever Azeroth takes you, whatever place you find yourself holed up in, I hope you enjoy the ride. Thank you. So up next is we're going to have Sarah Carmody show some amazing effects.
Thank you. Hey BlizzCon, I'm Sarah. I'm going to show you a little bit of what the effects team has been up to. And don't worry if you're not exactly sure what effects are. Basically, we make the magic. So if it sparkles, if it explodes, arcane energy, void magic, holy light, anything from little sparkles on loot piles to forming giant legion buildings out of nothing, out of thin air, that's all stuff that we end up doing. So one of our biggest initiatives has been to go through and update player abilities. And this is an ongoing effort. We went through every class, every spec, updated as many things as possible. And I thought it would be fun to take one of these spells that we had updated recently and kind of break it down and show you a little bit of what we do day to day. This effects is a little bit of a mystery. So this is Arcane Blast, and effects is pretty much abstract animation. So we use the same principles and ideas that character animators like Ian do, but instead of applying them to creatures and characters, we're applying them to abstract shapes. Okay, keep looping. And so we're applying them to bits and abstract shapes. So I'm going to look at just that rune part. So I painted this guideline rune, but we don't want it to just turn on and off. We wanted to do some fun intro. And to do that in our game, I need to split it into more individual bits. So here it is broken up. It looks like there's less going on there, but that's because you can reuse some of it. But you can use all of these little elements, put them on their own squares and planes, rearrange them to build that first rune that you saw. And here it is overlaid, so you can kind of see it builds the same thing. And if I arrange those little bits in that middle image from left to right in the order that I want them to appear, like this, so I have the structure showing up first, then the decorative elements like lines and dots, and then the symbols are last. When I scroll a reveal texture through them, it starts to do this really cool reveal animation. And basically, all those squares and elements that are separated out in the bottom left, white is on and black is off, and the one on the right is with all the transparency put together, the final result. So this is just one of 8 layers that make up Arcane Blast, just the impact. And you can see none of them on their own really tell you much of anything. None of them on their own are really that interesting to look at. It's when we put them all together that we get good complexity and appeal. So we take that and we layer it even more with work from the character animators like this precast and cast animation. We have a buildup of energy on my target dummy that I'm beating up all day, every day in this little gray room. And this is when everything starts to come together and things start to feel fun and impactful. So making the spells look good is one thing, but we also wanted to do a better job communicating what you need to know as a player. This is a spell before we updated it, and if you don't already know what it is, and I'm kind of hoping that some of you out here don't immediately recognize it, like, is it damage? Is it healing? It's kind of hard to tell. And there's a couple things that contribute to that. There's like really sharp shapes. There's this big shock wave that goes out. There's circles in the center that look like they should constrict you. And what this is a holy word sanctity. It's a giant priest AoE heal. It should feel friendly, and it doesn't exactly feel friendly. So this is it after we updated it. All the shapes are now soft. It feels like it's emitting light. There's slow upward and outward motion. It feels inviting. And of course, sparkles are a pretty good sign that it's going to be friendly. So maybe if you're a priest now, you can get your raid to stand in it when you cast it. And again, here are the layers that build up that one impact. So you can see a little bit of a breakdown. So we went through and did that kind of thing with as many spells as we could from each spec. It's still ongoing. There are some spells that we just didn't get to. Like there are even more Holy Priest spells that we'd like to bring in line with this. There's even entire specs that we didn't get to. Warlocks, you're on the way. And this is just one of our major initiatives on the effects team recently. And you're going to start to see more in these recent patches and also in our new expansion. We've also been working on giving raid and dungeon bosses each their own custom, unique kits for all their spells. We have a little more manpower now, so we can do a better job supporting interiors and exteriors, the environment and dungeon teams, adding more effects to their zones, and just other things like adding cool animations to mounts and death animations to characters out in the game. But you guys already know all about Legion, so you probably want to see some stuff from the new expansion, right? Okay, so maybe you want to know about some spooky stuff that's happening in Drusvar. If you recall, these lovely grandmas, who aren't really grandmas, they're just twisted by this evil magic that they're using. With new content, we have to come up with these new kits of magic, and like what should they look like? So they use this ancient druidic death magic. They've come into this zone, they've harnessed that magic, and they're wielding it as their own to do really mean things with it. So what does ancient druidic death magic look like? So we start by kind of exploring some ideas of where we could go. And these are just 3 of the first ones that we came up with. Like, should it be kind of these ashes that feel like they have a life of their own on the left? Should it be just so powerful that it's zapping around, kind of like inverted lightning? Or should it be a more traditional, soft, wispy, spirity magic? And you'll notice that all 3 are kind of in the same color palette. They're kind of a friendly blue, and it's making them all feel a little bit too friendly. So in our next iteration, we took a hard left on the color palette, but kept some of the elements that we liked from the ashes. So we took those ashes, made them chunkier in shape, harder lines. They're kind of eating away at each other. They like kind of linger in the air like they're not of this world. They're definitely creepy. So instantly this guy reads more menacingly. And he should, because I hear he's made of dead cats maybe, and are those skulls in his gut? I don't know. But you don't want to mess with him. So for all intents and purposes, this does its job. It tells you what you need to know, that they're creepy and you shouldn't mess with them. But you've kind of lost the connection to spirit magic, and it's hard to make that visual leap. And we could just tell you that this is what ancient druidic death magic looks like, but we can do better, and we'd rather show, not tell you. So we took what was working from the first iteration and the second iteration and kind of jammed them together. So it's still these ashy, nasty, creepy shapes that are kind of dripping off and have a mind of their own, but with that spirit magic color that you recognize, so you can better make that visual connection. Then we get to propagate it out to things like props and the magic kit that the witches use. So this is what it looks like when a witch nukes you with this kind of magic. And we do this for every new kit that we get. So we do the same things for like these blood troll casters, and I don't have time to go through the whole iterative process, but I can skip right to the good part, which is this is what their version of that Nova is, this nasty blood splatter. So thank you for listening. I hope you learned a little bit more about effects. And up next is Tina to talk about our awesome new zones.
Hey everyone. My name is Tina Wong, and I'm going to be sharing one of our new zones, Nazmir, with you today. So first of all, I'm on the environment art team. We focus on all the natural elements of the world. That means we make trees, plants, rocks. Everything from blades of grass to clouds in the sky is art that's made by our team. We work really closely with our level design team. They take the art that we create and build the world with it. So one of the more environment-focused zones that we worked on this expansion is Nazmir, which is on the continent of Zandalar. Nazmir is filled with Zandalari troll ruins and the growing empire of those blood trolls whom you saw earlier. The Zandalari abandoned the area due to the rampant use of blood magic that was starting to spread through their society. With the environment, we wanted to capture a overgrown, primeval feel, something from a lost world. When developing Nazmir, we wanted to create an experience where the player goes in and out of these light and dark spaces as they quest through the zone. So we created 2 main biomes inspired by salt marshes and swamps. This allows us to get those different moods for each space. The edges of the zone are a bit of a mix between a delta and a marsh. It's much more bright and open, which gives a lot of room for huge creatures like this dinosaur to hang out. We also want to make sure that we're not keeping the player in dark and gloomy spaces all the time, especially since we know they'll be returning often for world quests. When designing things like plants and vegetation, we have to make sure that we sometimes ground our designs in reality. For instance, you can see the shorter trees in this scene are based on mangroves, which are known to grow in salty coastal waters. You may have noticed that on WoW, we usually just make whatever we think looks cool, but sometimes adding that touch of realism makes things feel more believable. As you go deeper into Nazmir, you enter the swamp. This is where you'll start to see these ancient, massive trees. We love the ideas of players being able to run underneath these huge root systems. The swamp is also where you start to see blood trolls, so we wanted to create a darker vibe overall. An interesting challenge, though, whenever we create a new zone, is to try to give it a different personality from the zones that we've created in the past. With Nazmir, since Zandalar is a bit of a tropical feel, we thought it would be cool to add strangler figs, which create these long trunks that grow off of other trees. They added this interesting vertical silhouette that made the space feel pretty intimidating. For things like plants, we have to make sure we strike the right balance between plants that are low detail fillers that just take up space, and accents like that red one, which add interest. If every single plant in the scene were to call a lot of attention to itself, the scene as a whole would seem way too busy. So here's an area that has a bunch of those plants in action. You can see that the red one is used only once in a while. Something that was also important to us for the swamp was to make sure that the water seemed kind of gross. Like there's a bunch of decay and organic matter, maybe some weird stuff from all those blood troll rituals. We ended up asking our engine programmers to create a new type of water for us, which, thanks, hey engineers, that let us put all this muck at the edges. It just makes it feel like this place is not the nicest. In addition to our 2 main biomes, Nazmir has a lot of unique spaces, like the necropolis. Even though the environment art used here is mostly the same as what's in the rest of the zone, by adding new lighting, a bunch of fog, and a new sky, the space feels really different. In the end, when building Nazmir, we wanted to create a journey for the player where they go from the bright marsh to the enclosed gloom of the swamp as they discover the story of Nazmir and find what's hidden deep within. I hope you'll all get a chance to check it out if you haven't already. Nazmir is one of our demos on the show floor, so I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much. And next up, we'll have Jessica Clark taking us to the land of Kulturas.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessica, and today I'm very excited to share with you how the Dungeon team created the architecture for Kulturas. So you can probably tell by the name, the Dungeon team is the art team that creates the dungeons and the raids for World of Warcraft, but we create a lot of the buildings and the cities that you see in the game as well. It's a dungeon artist's job to translate culture into structures. So when we had this exciting opportunity to finally develop Kulturas, we knew that we really had to understand the background of the people in order to create new art that would feel unique and alive. So before we even begin any of the art, we have to ask two questions: who and where? So from this concept piece, you can see that the environment is very cold and harsh and surrounded by water. So we knew we needed to make buildings that were not so delicate. They needed to withstand storms. They need tough materials. And the characters, as you may remember, are very hardy and seafaring. So we can also show this nautical connection in their ships. All right, so the beginning place that we can start from is their connection and pride with their ships. In our early explorations, we're really trying to find the best way to work in this theme. When we begin any art kit like this, we have to be very sensitive of the danger of maybe making things that look a little too fake or cities that look like an amusement park. So to really understand this theme, we studied the visual elements off of real ships. So on a ship, there's this great overall curve for the entire structure. We saw the rounded hull at the bottom and thought that could make a great roof shape. There's this really great silhouette on the side of the bow that we could also hang things off of. The windows, they're very concentrated onto the sides and onto the back. And we also saw that detail is concentrated just in very specific areas, and a lot else is just plain wood. So this building is a really great example of how we used that hull to create the roof shape. You can also see a lot of the detail is concentrated just onto the back of the building. So here's an example of where we use the bow underneath this windowsill and underneath the balcony to really create a rounded silhouette that's very unique to this kit. And the windows that we made are some of my favorite elements. You can see they're very detailed, but the most important thing to note is how they slope downwards and inwards. This is intentional to give the feeling like they were taken off of the back of a ship. All right, so the types of materials that we choose are also really important to sell that sea-weathered vibe in the buildings. You can see we painted things in a rough way. We added things like rust and splinters. Also, the color choices that we make will also tell the story and sell the mood. We used oxidized green as a color hit, but also a lot else is just earthy tones, very brown. This is sort of to make the people feel very grounded and practical. Something else you may have noticed, we use a lot of nautical-inspired design motifs in these buildings. These are like the little details that we use to break up the larger silhouettes. This is a way that we can sell the people's craftsmanship and their admiration for sea life. We can also make things feel more handmade. So these are really more like flavor hits. If we use them too much or too broadly, things would start to feel kind of fake. We did learn there is such thing as too much tentacle. And so the inspiration we took for this is going to be things like sea life, anchors, harpoons, things like that. So this is an example from Freehold, which is a demo dungeon that you can play at BlizzCon today. These buildings are used by the outlaws in Kulturas. So we really didn't want to give them a very refined design sensibility. You can see we took things like an anchor above the doorway. There's a steering wheel on the side of the building, ropes hanging down to suggest rigging. We really wanted to give the idea that these are the people that would just take elements off of their ships and stick them onto their buildings. But here's an example of where we use that tentacle motif to add a more curved and refined silhouette. So you'll see this a lot more on the upscale buildings or buildings that are used by the citizens in the cities and the villages. On the left on this tower, we use that steering wheel motif again, but we also added the image of a kraken and some ropes. And on the right, on this round roof, we used wood in the shape of a mast. We added ropes. This is to sort of give this now the feeling of a crow's nest. So all of these together, the choices of the silhouettes, the materials, the craftsmanship of their carvings, these tell the visual story of Kulturas. And as dungeon artists, it is always our goal to make you feel like you're immersed in a living city. And we have so much more exciting art to come for this expansion, and I hope that you will all enjoy playing through Kulturas. And up next, Ashley Warner to talk about what the prop team has been working on.
Hey BlizzCon, I'm Ashley and I'm on the prop team, and I'm going to be showing you some props we've been making for the Zandalari trolls. So, what is prop art? On the prop team, we make what the characters would make. That can be anything from a bottle of wine, to a mailbox, to a statue, to a huge animated centerpiece like a fountain. We're kind of like interior designers, or if this was a movie, we'd be like set decorators. And the main job of props is to make the world feel more lived in and to tell a story about the people there. And then gameplay-wise, the job of props is to guide the player's eye to things that are important to them, like a quest objective or the bank. So the props I want to show you are for the Zandalari trolls. We've had a lot of troll content before, and you've seen the Zandalari before, back in Mists of Pandaria on the Isle of Thunder. So we were thinking, what can we do to make these guys feel interesting and new again? And the biggest thing that sets them apart from the other trolls is that this is the first time you'll be seeing a thriving troll city. It's ancient, opulent, colorful, but also kind of harsh and sinister. And since it's so ancient and they're so settled in there, we're going to see a lot more of their culture than we've seen before. So, what is that culture made of? The first huge part of their culture is dinosaurs. They worship a lot of the dinosaur Loa, and they're also a part of their everyday lives. And you can see that in the decorative design, like the carvings in the wood, or in the shapes, like the face and the ballista or the hanging lamp. We also show that in materials, like the dinosaur leather that's on that market stall. And we show it in things like food, like that giant dino egg they're cooking up. The second big part of their culture is the Mayan and Aztec influence on their style. And that's always been a part of the troll thing, but it was kind of subtle before, and now we're trying to make it a lot less subtle. So the way we're showing that is with things like relief carvings, mosaic tile, Mesoamerican foods, patterns, and then the cloth, and then the architecture, lots of gold, but most importantly, lots and lots of skulls. So the third big part of their culture that's really unique from the other troll tribes is how spiritual and intellectual they are. This is a society run by a political council, scholars, and priests. These are the classy trolls. So you can see that in places like this. This is a Tal Dazar, and this is a dungeon that you can play here on the demo. And this is where the troll kings are buried. So how are we showing that spiritual quality? One way is with the gold. So the Zandalari use gold all throughout their kit, but they use a lot more of it in important places like the dungeon or the main pyramid in the city. And the gold here also has a subtle magical quality to it. You can see that in the way the fire turns into a sparkly gold, the liquid gold that the priestess is using, or in the waterfalls that the environment team made. We just wanted it to feel like it was infused into the place. So overall, the Zandalari are smart but savage. They have an ancient, rich culture, and we want to show more depth and history to them than we have before. But they're still trolls, and they're still kind of wild. Now, this is just a small taste of the Zandalari kit. Zuldazar is huge, and there's going to be a ton more for you to explore, and we hope you're excited about that. But Battle for Azeroth isn't our only focus right now. We're also trying to get more content out into patches, and one way we really like to do that is with holidays. So as a bonus, I'm going to show you a couple holidays that you might not have seen yet. But first, let me tell you why we like holidays. They do one thing really well, and that is they make it feel like time is passing, which makes the world feel more believable. And then we also like that they bring the community together, just like a real holiday. And then as artists, they're just really fun to work on. The art can be sillier than normal since it's not permanent. And it's an opportunity to make our weird ideas that don't fit elsewhere, like this horse costume that we just added to How Is It? So the first holiday we worked on recently was adding a new band to Dark Moon Fair. This is a Forsaken band called Blight Boar. Somebody likes them. But we wanted to keep some things that are familiar about them, like the Gothic medieval architecture, or how they use a lot of stained glass. But the Forsaken have always been super metal, so it's fun to see that turned up to 11. And then we added some things you might not have noticed, like this arm that pops out of the grave and starts rocking out with the band. The second holiday we worked on recently was the Auction House Dance Party. And that was really fun to work on, but it was also an interesting challenge, because we had to think, how can we make DJ turntables that fit into WoW and don't look too advanced? So we made it out of 2 phonographs, and we added some wobbly engineering style details so it doesn't look too reliable. And then we also took some inspiration from Hearthstone's Karazhan adventure with the disco ball and crazy rainbow dance floor. So I just wanted to end this by showing you some more of those things we made that didn't fit elsewhere. A lot of these went into holidays, but some things like Pepe and the plushies went out into the world. The prop team is always looking for ways to add flavor and life to the game, whether that's through updating an existing race so that they feel new again, drawing from real cultures, or just making crazy stuff like this for holidays. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of the whole art team, and we hope you guys are as excited about Battle for Azeroth as we are. And if you stick around, the leads are going to come out for a Q&A. Thank you.